Welcome to the 5 things you need to know about the Electoral College. I'm Mr. Rodman here to take you through it. Let's start with the magic number. It's 270. The first candidate to get to 270, which is one more than half of the electoral votes available, is going to be the next POTUS, the next president of the United States, because there's only one candidate that can get one more than half. How do we determine this? Well, 538 votes are coming from the number of seats in the House of Representatives, 435, and the number of seats in the Senate, 100, and that takes us to 535. Where are the other three coming from? The other three come from the District of Columbia. It's the 23rd Amendment that basically gave D.C. the right to have 3 electoral votes in the Electoral College. And thus, that is where the number 538 comes from. So you need one more than half. Half would be 269, and one more would be 270. So we determine a state's electors by the number of House seats they have and the number of senators. In this case, for the state of Maryland, for instance, we have 10 electoral votes, which means we have 8 House members and 2 senators. And so it's very easy to understand. If California, for instance, has 55 electoral votes, they have 2 senators and 53 House seats. So it's very easy to understand that. Number 3, the winner takes it all. In 48 of the 50 states, we have what's called winner take all. And that means if you win the most votes of all of the candidates that are running in that state, you win all of the electoral votes in that state. Let me say that again. If you win the most votes in that state, you win all of the electoral votes. There's no proportional representation in that person who gets 10% of the vote gets 10% of the electoral votes. Nope, it's winner take all. So if you win by a small margin, which we saw a lot of this happen in 2016, where it was just a margin that put Trump over the top in Wisconsin and Michigan, it was enough to winner take all. Hillary Clinton got nothing out of Wisconsin and Michigan, even though she may have won 49% of the vote. She doesn't win any of the seats or any of the electoral votes for those states. Now, the exception to this is Nebraska and Maine. They have proportional representation, and so their electoral votes are distributed electorally, meaning those that win the most votes in the state win the Senate electors, which are 2, and then those in the individual House districts, the winner with the most votes in each of the districts wins the electoral vote for that district. So just to give you an update on Nebraska and Maine, in Nebraska in 2008, Senator Obama actually won the Omaha district and thus won the electoral vote for that seat, while John McCain won all of the other electors in that state. In 2016, President Trump won one of the House districts for Maine, and Hillary Clinton won all of the other districts and the overall Senate electors. So those are 2 examples of where proportional representation did make a difference. And actually, the Cook Political Report actually said in 2012, if all of the states had gone to proportional representation, Mitt Romney would have won the presidency if they had been awarded proportionally, but House district by House district, and then Senate seats by whoever wins the most in that state. So it's interesting because President Obama won the electoral votes because he also won the popular vote in 2012. But had it been proportional voting, it actually would have made a difference. And that is a very interesting statistic that we don't hear quite often. But an advocate for the proportional representation certainly would use that election as a concrete talking point for why it's so important for them to look at proportional voting. But again, that would also require an amendment to the Constitution, and 2/3 of Congress, 3/4 of the states. And we've seen a lot of look at Chapter 9 notes if you want to see how that goes back to how that would need to change. But we have seen no appetite for that on Capitol Hill or in the states for making that happen so far, because there have been some other proposed reforms out there to get rid of the Electoral College, but none of them right now have been proposed as options that have even passed the House, let alone gone on to the states. All right, that leads us to number 4, which is we don't vote for the candidates. We actually vote for the electors. Many people who vote don't know this, but we actually vote for the electors. The citizens that are voting are actually voting for the electors in your state that will represent you in the Electoral College when they meet in December in your state capital. That is who we're voting for, even though it may show up on the ballot as being, hey, voting for the president and vice president. But it's really the electors that we're selecting that will go and vote for the candidates for office. Now we have heard of faithless electors, those that may go and vote the way they want to, vote rogue, but for the most part, that doesn't have a significant impact on the Electoral College and hasn't up to this point. We have seen them do that ever since, for quite a long time, at least 20 years, if not more, and probably more. But the idea is those are usually they're standing up for something, usually for voting issues, problems with voting machines, the irregularity of voting or voter suppression. Those types of things would lead to a voter, an elector voting rogue, and not for the way that they had originally wanted to vote as a result of some type of an issue. But kind of interesting. And then the 5th and final thing you need to know is that just because you win the popular vote doesn't mean you're going to win the Electoral College. And this has happened 5 times now, twice in the last 20 years. We have seen John Quincy Adams, this happened, was thrown into the House of Representatives. Rutherford B. Hayes, and the idea of ending Reconstruction was a deal made to get Samuel Tilden out, even though he won the popular vote. Benjamin Harrison, we saw this happen to Benjamin Harrison with Grover Cleveland. And then we saw George W. Bush and Al Gore, probably one of the most famous ones. They came down to Florida and was an election in which Gore won the popular vote by over 500,000 votes, but lost the Electoral College. He came within 4 electoral votes of winning. But he didn't win Florida. He didn't even win his home state. And people say if he won his home state, Florida wouldn't even been an issue. But he did not win as a result. And then Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump saw this in the 2016 race, in which Hillary Clinton won almost 3 million more votes than Donald Trump, but lost the Electoral College because of losing the the quote-unquote blue firewall of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So as a result of that, winning the electoral votes is all that matters, and you can win the popular vote all you want to till the cows come home. But if you don't win the electoral votes, you do not win the presidency, and that is what we know. So it's led to the great debate. Should we get rid of this? We saw candidates like Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg and others talk about getting rid of the Electoral College. We have not seen an appetite for that in the House of Representatives, but it really does call into question this debate of whether we should elect the president by popular vote, or even the national interstate compact that we've had about 200 electoral votes that have said, hey, if the national popular vote winner is different from our state, we will abide by the national popular vote winner. Now, one of the concerns that is kind of the anti-popular vote debate is only the big states will matter, and all the other ones will be kind of washed to the side, because you'll really be rallying for those votes in California and Texas, Florida, and New York, and so the other states kind of get pushed to the wayside. But again, as I said, we haven't seen a whole lot of appetite for that, at least at the moment, in terms of the Electoral College. So for now, it's here to stay, and definitely will be used in the upcoming 2020 presidential race. So those are the 5 things you need to know about the Electoral College. Live the 5. We hope you found it helpful, and definitely refer to the highlights and chapter notes, and we will see you soon.